Hello, welcome to another dyno video, and no, you do not need to adjust your sets. Or who has a television set? You don't need to adjust your phone, I suppose, or tablet or whatever. Whatever it is you're doing on the toilet at the moment, and if you're on the toilet, I hope you have a relaxing one. No, this is another TVR Griffith. We had a TVR Griffith on a couple of months ago, something like that. In fact, we have a new leaderboard. It's not, it's the old one with some steel on it, so magnets actually stick. And at the top of this leaderboard, I have put the Griffith, but this is not the same Griffith as this one, so why the hell am I doing another one? This is a Griffith 430. The one that went on before was a Griffith 500. If you know your TVR Griffiths, didn't take many takes that one, you will know that the difference between a 430 and a 500, among other things, among the CC and various little changes here and there, the main difference is that one is a CAT equipped car, and one of them is a pre-CAT. The Griffith was basically available with three main engine sizes. There were two pre-CAT cars, of which this is one. There was the 400 and the 430, and then with catalytic converters fitted, it was the 500. The difference actually came after 1993, after the Chimera went into production, because TVR actually stopped production of the Griffith to bring the Chimera into production. The Griffith was a Roaraway sales success. They sold a lot of them when it went on the motor show stand in Earl's Court or the NEC or wherever the hell it was. And it came out in 1992, very early 1992, J-Reg cars. This would be a J-Reg car if it had its original plate on it. So it makes it kind of surprising that they stopped producing them for a while. So basically you had the 400 and the 430, which is a 4 litre and a 4.3. And then there's a gap where they didn't make them. And then the 500 came in and replaced the 400 and the 430. From that point on, it's just 500 or no Griffith at all, because the Chimera had come in. And the Chimera is the one that picked up the 4 litre and 4.3 sales, or 4.3 sales for a short time. So why did they stop producing the Griffith? Well, to be honest with you, it must have just been space, because these things were in demand. I mean, look at it. They look amazing. Now, this is a bit of a rarer car than the one we saw on previously. As I said, the 500 came in after production had stopped and started again, which would have been around late 93, I think it was. And that ran up until 2001, 2002, when the last Griffiths rolled off production. The pre-CAT cars, like this, well, they only ran up until that little break when the Chimera was introduced. So they ran from kind of, I think it was early 92, up until early 93. And that was it. Which is why you don't see many Griffiths with L prefix registrations on them. You don't see many L-Reg Griffiths because they didn't make any. Well, they made some, but they didn't make many. Why would you want a pre-CAT? Well, it's basically noise. So this car is 90% the same as the one that was on it the other day, but it's slightly different. So some of the changes are under here. Some of the minor changes, minor changes, are on the outside. Things like the nose is slightly different. The rear lights are Cavalier Mark III rear light clusters, not Mark III GSI rear light clusters. There's a couple of differences inside, a couple of spec changes, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same car. But that engine is slightly different to the one that was on here the other day. So this is a Griffith 430 engine, which looks to you like a Rover V8, as you can see. And it is a Rover V8, as you can see. And in fact, it isn't actually anything special from TVR. This is basically what Rover referred to as the 4.2 that went in the Range Rover Classic. And for once, TVR are not lying. They're right, and Rover are wrong. The CC on this engine is 4,280 cc. Rover claimed it was 4,275, but it matters not, because both of those would class it as a 4.3. It might even be this one is actually slightly different. The reason being that TVR use different pistons. Now, I don't know how true this is, but apparently the pistons in this engine are replaced with 3.9 pistons, which are then machined down, and it changes the compression ratio. So they run a slightly different compression ratio to the Range Rovers. The cam is different. I think it's a Kent 214 as standard, and they had a fair bit of porting and polishing going on. But this is not the top spec 4.3 that came along, because if you ever see one of these where it says 430 BV, that's the top spec 4.3 that came along, and they're rare. They only made about 25 of those, or they probably made quite a few more of them with the badge, but actual big valves there was about 25. Now those have huge exhaust ports and in the head, and a slightly more aggressive cam again, and big valves, and they are actually quite nice. But this one should be now, because this car is not standard. This engine has V8 development stealth cam, RPI engineering stage 3 heads. I believe it, I can't remember actually, I should have checked with the owner. But I think it's got ACT carbon trumpets, so you take out the metal trumpets that are in the plenum there and replace them with short, sort of more smoothly flared carbon ones. It's got, obviously the exhaust is I mean, this is a standard, this is an ACT exhaust, but it is standard spec, and of course you don't have the catalytic converter. You have the individual pipes coming all around here and then getting bundled into this. And basically, well, it makes the engine bay a bit cooler, but it also makes it sound a bit cooler. Two different ways of saying the word cooler. Oh, a pigeon just flew in. It's a pre-serp engine, so you have the old school belt arrangement, the old school Rover V8 engine. And of course, being a pre-serp means no power steering on this one. You cannot get a pre-serp Griffith or Chimera with power steering. In fact, the only TVR you can get with a pre-serp V8 and power steering is a wedge, because you can't put the power steering pump in this car, because there's a header tank there, a coolant header tank, and an exhaust underneath where the pump goes. Other than that, it's a fairly straightforward car, although this is a nice touch. The 4.3s had their own cast aluminium rocker covers with TVR embossed in them, and they did actually normally have more polished ribs that go along it there, but they've worn down a bit on this one, so I think we decided to just go black and just bring the TVR bit out. You can just see it. So if you see those, then you know they're off a 4.3. The 4 litre just had the standard Rover V8 silver ones, and the 5 litre had that as well, but they were painted purple because TVR. It's the same largely as the chassis that we saw here on the 500. Similar radiator arrangement. Obviously some pipework and stuff is different because it's preset, but you know, for the most part it's largely the same. If you're thinking, oh, that chassis looks good, this isn't original coating. It's I did the chassis on this car about 10 years ago. So power wise on this engine, well, it's a TVR, so it's kind of, who knows. I don't think these ones are as far out as some of the others. The book figure, I believe, is about 280 horsepower from a 4.3. I think that would be optimistic, but it's probably not a million miles out. I think a standard one of these would probably see around 250 on the rollers, maybe a smidge more, a healthy 4.3. Otherwise, yeah, it's similar sort of power to the 450 that came in the Chimera, you know, the Range Rover 4.6, as everyone knows it. I think with the mods this has got, I would like it to be seeing 280, 275, 280 with a healthy graph, or 270, but with a healthy graph would be good. I have had one of these on here over 300. And in fact, I think this one did over 300 once, but yes, it did, but it turned out the dyno was not, it was not well that day, because someone had left some settings from a previous car in there, and it didn't record it properly. Idiot, whoever that was. I would say place your bets, but it doesn't matter. It's just here for the noise, isn't it? That's the only reason you're watching. So I should probably get on and make some. He's a lovely guy. Really nice guy. One of my best customers. Well, okay, so it's lost less, like it's less down on its book figure than the 500 was. So that's good. 500 is supposed to have 340 and only made 294. So what was that down? That was down 46 horsepower. And this isn't down 46 horsepower. It's only 31. TVR be doing TVR things. So yeah, I've done 2 runs so far, and I don't think there's much point doing more. Well, there is, but not for numbers. 248.9 and 249.5. It's getting to 5,100 and it's just dying off, which is actually kind of strange because these engines do sort of, God, look at it. It does look good. These engines, they do rev. They're not, you know, the 500 is quite a lumpy, luggy kind of all-in-one punch type thing. These aren't. These are a bit more flexible, but dang, that's, I mean, we've got to look at context here, haven't we? I mean, the context here is that what's the standard book figure on a 4. What do they call them? 4.2 Rover V8 in a Range Rover, what, 220 horsepower, something like that. This is an old school engine. We're talking 60s technology with a pretty antiquated fuel injection system on it. And it's had, CC is the same, it's had some headwork, it's had an exhaust, it's had a different cam, slightly different intake. And it's gained 30 horsepower. That's about right. You wouldn't expect it to, you know, in the old days, you had to put in a ton of money to get not a lot of performance. In modern cars, you remap a car and get 50 horsepower instantly. In these days, that didn't happen. So 250, or genuine 250, is what you'd kind of expect if the 220 that Range Rover started off with is legit. Gutting because the book figure being 280, but then it's TVR, they did bend the truth slightly, and there's nothing to say that a car that they might have made one engine that did 280 on a dyno, on an engine dyno, because TVR Power, they knew the stuff, they could make powerful engines, but for every car to be that spec, I've done 500s before that are 249, so that's not abnormal. I've never, I mean, a 400 is supposed to be 240. I've never done a 400 at 240. The highest 400 I've ever done was 218, and that didn't have a standard cam in it. And it had some other little bits and bobs. Nothing major, but some other little bits and bobs. And it was 218. Most of them are 205. 200, 205. I'm bummed out. That said, there's always a saying I go back to with TVRs. I think I coined it in one of the books I wrote. It's not about how fast they go, it's how they go fast. And in this car's case, obviously the numbers, the headline numbers aren't all that. It's actually got quite a nice graph, up to 5,100. The torque is nice and broad. I haven't analysed the numbers on it at all, because I'm too depressed. But what I am going to do is allow the car to underpress me. Well, let's just run it again for the noise, just because it sounds spine-tinglingly good. Right, I've decided to move inside the car. Let's, hang on. Speedy window for a Griffith. And then, there we go. Right, so I've moved in here. You can hear it inside. And you'll have to excuse the oil pressure gauge, which is falling into the dashboard. Oh, don't worry about that temperature gauge. It's the radiator's had the cooling fan blasting at it for ages. It'll come back up again in a minute. Right, so we're on board Griffith 430. She's not done too well on the numbers, but it doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter makes a noise like this. I don't think the numbers are going to be any better. Can I see them from here? Oh, it might be slightly better. Let's have a look. Would be rude not to do one from the back, wouldn't it? Same again. Right, just letting her run down a bit at the moment. Letting the cooling fan do its job. Oh, it has, it's come down. Doesn't get hot at all, this one, it's quite happy. Bit deflating, isn't it? Yeah, it happens. I'm naive. I'm being naive. I've gone into this thinking, oh, this thing's going to fly. It's going to do quite well. Might get the 280. And I know better than that. I know that people spend a lot of money tuning TVRs to get them up to the book figure. And this is another one of those cases. And this isn't heavily modified. This only has a few sort of smaller mods, if you like. The cam is not an aggressive cam. It's slightly, well, actually it's probably not much different to the standard one, if I'm honest. Yeah, and the breathing mods and things, well, yeah, it's got the better heads on it, but everything else below the heads is standard. The management, crucially, is probably one of the key differences. That's standard. Yeah, I'm a bit bummed out. I was hoping to go back to the guy with some sort of happier numbers than that. But we did say that the most important thing is the graph. The graph is good. Apart from the bit at the top where it goes wrong, the graph is pretty good. It's very smooth. In fact, it's nearly a straight line all the way up. The torque is broad. It's a good sort of 220 pound-foot all the way from, well, 2,500 revs upwards. And this thing weighs a ton, 1,000 kilos. So it does go all right. Yeah, a bit of a bummer. I should have known. I've put other 4.3s in there before, and they've been down in the 230s, so I should have known. Hey, it is what it is. I know what will happen when I put my Chimera on there, my 4-litre Chimera, which basically has a Land Rover Discovery engine. I will bet money that's not even above 200. So, yeah. Oh well. Nope, just oh well.